Welcome to Mothers Illuminated, where we help light the pathway through motherhood. I'm your host, Michelle McCartney, and we're here at the Co-work of Londonderry. If you're a mom looking for a great place to get some work done away from the house with your kids, definitely look at the Co-work of Londonderry at londonderry.cowork.com, and co-work is spelled C-O-W-E-R-C. They have office space, conference rooms, workshops for business owners, podcast rooms, and lots of great benefits for members. And today we have Kasia Weglarz. She's a hypnotherapist here in New Hampshire. You might have seen her on our other show. She was here with another episode. But today we're going to talk specifically about hypnosis related to pregnancy. And then we might even touch on some hypnobirthing and kind of how that works as well. So I know we were kind of talking a little bit before the show just about how your consciousness really starts in the womb. Mm-hmm. And so I guess maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that, and we can kind of talk about, you know, how the subconscious affects pregnancy and, you know, how our mindset during pregnancy affects our children.
Sure. So we could even go a little further back, which is if somebody is having trouble getting pregnant mm-hmm. and they have unexplained infertility, mm-hmm. because a lot of people will have that. Mm-hmm. And when we go back in hypnosis, they'll go to scenes. This will be like regression therapy. Mm-hmm. And they'll see that women can even stop their periods.
Wow.
Yeah, psychologically. Because they're constantly complaining about it. They're like, I can't stand this. This is mm-hmm. so horrible. Or if they have, heavy periods or painful periods or PMS or whatever it is, they're just like, I wish this would just stop. And if they mm-hmm. say it enough, not everybody can turn it off, but some people do. And then they're like, this is great. I don't get a period. But then, that happened when they were 15 or 16 or something. And then when they're 25 or 35 or somewhere in between there and they start thinking about having children, they've now turned their period off. Mm-hmm. And so the doctor will be like, well, you can't get pregnant because you haven't had a period. Mm-hmm. And so you can actually go back in hypnosis and see where you made those beliefs, like the three biggest scenes or the several scenes where you created this situation of not having a period, and mm-hmm. and people will turn it back on and get pregnant like pretty quickly afterwards. Yeah, a lot of people, with everything I've done, be it acupuncture or the allergy elimination I used to do or hypnosis, it's like people get pregnant so fast afterwards because we're designed to, make babies. So, and that other people will have had the experience of, they became sexually active at, whatever age, and they're not married yet, and they're like, oh God, please don't let me get pregnant. Mm-hmm. And they say that enough, and again, they're not getting mm-hmm. pregnant. And then when they want to get pregnant, the mind's like, yeah, but you told me. You told me back when you were 18 and you didn't want to get pregnant. You told me, I don't want to get pregnant, I don't want to get pregnant. And now you have to go in there and reverse it. It's like you flipped a switch, and now you got to flip it back on. Yeah. But it's totally possible. Yeah. Because doctors will tell you we don't know why you have unexplained infertility, and so that's the explanation is your subconscious mind has been listening to you, and it's super powerful, and it did exactly what you wanted it to. So you have to be very careful. The mind is very literal. It's extremely literal. So I hear people say stuff and I'm like, ooh, don't let your mind hear that. Yeah. Because it's very, very literal. So.
And it's interesting too, because I know one of the things that they always say is if you're trying to get pregnant, don't focus so much on trying to get pregnant, because once you start tracking everything, a lot of women, they get pregnant once they stop doing that. Yeah. And is there any sort of explanation as to why that happens?
Well, because you're focused on the lack of a baby rather than and so it's like people will feel that they can't get pregnant and adopt, and they get relaxed, and then they get pregnant.
Wow. Because
they've adopted, and they're like, oh, I have my baby, and then they relax. I know that's what people don't get. The subconscious mind is literal. It doesn't make any sense. It is pure emotion. It sees in images and feelings and not in words necessarily, but it will take you literally. It's like, I think I might have said it on the last show, If you went through an experience and you're like, I never want to feel like that again, the mind's like, leave that with me.
Yeah.
And it does whatever is the fastest way. It's like if it's public speaking, say you got up to speak in front of your class and you said a word wrong and your whole class laughed at you when you were, I don't know, like 10.
Yeah.
And you felt embarrassed and your face got red and you said to your mind, I never want to feel this way again. So every time you try to, get up at work and make a presentation, you like get diarrhea.
Yeah.
Or you have a panic attack.
Yeah.
Because the mind's like, you told me
not
you
to let
never
that happen.
you never wanted to feel that way again. And it's one of my teachers, she told the story about she had written a book and she was going on a TV show, actually. And so the guy before her, he was sweating so much. She said the makeup was sliding off his face.
Oh my gosh.
Like he couldn't, he was, it was TV. So,
yeah.
And he was so nervous. He was sweating, literally sweating, and the makeup was sliding up. They were like, you can't go on like this.
Yeah.
So she got 2 spots, which she loved because she got to talk about her book for an extra, whatever it was, they're like 15-minute spots or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, but so somewhere, somehow, like that whole public speaking thing, I know we're getting off track of pregnancy a little bit, but it's a really good example. Like that will happen to certain people, and certain people will never ever speak in front of a crowd again, ever, not a work presentation. They will find some job they can do where they don't ever have to interact with anybody, which is possible. Or and the people who like make themselves do it and feel the fear and then just do it. And then like the third group is the people who try to do it, but they just end up with a panic attack or something.
Wow.
So that is the mind trying. Again, you asked for protection. I never want to feel that way again.
Yeah.
And the mind is just doing its job. But it doesn't know you're not 10 anymore and that you're 30 and you want to do a presentation and get a promotion. It's stuck back when the trauma happened. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
So it's the same with the pregnancy. If you have said, I don't want to get pregnant. I don't want to get pregnant. Oh my God, please don't let me be pregnant. You think you're asking God, but the subconscious mind is along with the universe and everything else. But when you're asking your personal subconscious mind, that part of you that's your personal subconscious mind to not let you get pregnant, then when you want the baby, the mind's like, yeah, but you told me all those times, that you had sex and didn't want to get pregnant. Yeah. So it's that simple. And when people go back in hypnosis, they're like, oh my God, I remember how afraid I was. Yeah. Because, we know when people get pregnant as teenagers, I've had clients who got pregnant as teenagers and they were just, brutally treated by their parents, and their parents said, how could you do this to me? Yeah. Like it's affecting the parents. It's like, how could they, it's happening to them, not to the parents. Yeah. The parents, that's another way of, never blame your children for, something happens, support them. Yeah. Yeah, no, of course it's not maybe the ideal, but it happened, and everything happens for a reason. Most people say that was the best thing that ever happened to me was having that child. Yeah. So, but if it happens enough, if the grandparents are that brutal, I remember I had one client she got pregnant as a teenager. It was a shotgun wedding. She married the guy. Her father was so brutal to her. And I just, for some reason, it was before I was doing hypnosis, and I said, how's that child? And she's like, oh, she's so sick. She had like brittle diabetes, and she was blind, and she had all these problems. Yeah, because because my client, I don't remember her name now, but I can see her face. She was the sweetest woman, and her father was just so brutal to her, just humiliated, embarrassed, calling her names. And I remember the story. She told me her aunt was pregnant at the same time, and she was of normal, married and normal, and he would give her all this praise, and in the same breath, just completely brutally diminish his daughter for getting pregnant, slut shaming and all of that, and then shotgun wedding to marry this man who she didn't love, and then I remember her telling me later that her husband commit suicide, and then his whole family blamed her. And I was like,
Oh my gosh.
I remember her name now. Her name was Jackie. I'm like, oh my God, Jackie, how are you alive and like
Right.
functioning? Because she had just so much stuff.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But yeah, we're super resilient and we're amazing. But those memories stay, not always buried. They're under the surface, but they're there, affecting your life and your decisions and your beliefs, and they form beliefs when you do that. You can make yourself not get pregnant, and then hypnosis really can help you find the key that unlocks that prevention of getting pregnant. And then while you're pregnant, focusing on, I remember too, these are all my clients teach me so much. This woman's like, I just imagined this little beautiful blonde angel, and I would just picture that as my daughter. And she's like, that's exactly, she came out and she was this beautiful blonde little angel. And I was like, that is so smart that you did that. Most people are like, what if my baby's deformed? What if it doesn't have a leg? And it's like, that is all stuff for your mind to go, let me think about that. Do I, but no, so we're, and sometimes you don't always have control because like there's some karma or something, and people have had miscarriages or something, and they're like, why do I keep having miscarriages? And usually that happens when the baby's not healthy. So it's not a bad thing. But people always see it as a tragedy and as a bad thing and all that. And it's not necessarily, maybe the baby wouldn't have been viable, it would have been stillborn, and how brutal would that be to have been through that whole pregnancy and then, have a baby that wasn't alive. So to know that there's an intelligence, that divine intelligence, infinite intelligence is taking care of all that. And you have this amazing body that's doing all this stuff. Like I kind of laugh when people say, oh, look at this, life I created. I'm like, wow. You are, contributing DNA, but you're, you are, the creator, but you're also, the divine intelligence is creating that life, because that's, you can't make a baby, because what about all the people who are trying to make babies and who can't, who are, who have said to themselves, I don't want to get pregnant, or whatever. So it's really, it's not up to us necessarily, and people who don't get pregnant and are so devastated, it's like, well, and then maybe they adopt and have these wonderful children. I have a another client, and they couldn't get pregnant, and they have these beautiful, beautiful children that they adopted, and she's like, my children are so amazing. I'm like, well, so what did that, and she came for hypnosis, a bunch of sessions, and it's like, so what would that have been like if you didn't, can you imagine your life without your children? She's like, oh, no, never. I'm so glad that happened. So the infertility led to having these beautiful children. And, the grandparents were not happy because they adopted children from Russia. And so, these innocent children, just because they were from Russia, the grandparents I don't think the grandfather so much the grandmother. And I knew her, so she's an angel now. She's back in heaven, perfect. But while she was alive, she was quite judgmental. So she had a problem with the kids being from Russia, which is
straight
cuckoo, But it's it was another generation. And so, but my client is like, oh, love my children. I can't imagine my life without my children. So it was everything happens for a reason. If she had her own. Birthed her own children, she wouldn't have had these beautiful children. So who's to say? They say the universe always has a plan. So okay, so where are we?
And I was just going to say, there's so many different opportunities out there too. So I have a friend who was they struggled with fertility as well, and they ended up adopting actually 3 children. And it's so sweet because their children obviously look nothing like them because they're adopted, but their kids are like, blonde hair, blue eyes, they're beautiful, and they're so sweet. And she's always posting pictures of, oh, look at what they did today. Like, this is amazing. And, and it's exactly that. And, she was lucky enough that she got all siblings when she adopted. So it was really cool that she was able to do that. But it's just like, you're giving a home, a loving home to these other children, and there are children that are put up for adoption. My mom was actually adopted.
Wow.
And she had a similar experience where obviously her parents loved her. They struggled with fertility, and they, were able to adopt her. Of course, it's an Italian family, Catholic Italian family in New York, so they made sure that they adopted another Italian child, and that kind of thing.
Oh, sure.
But it was kind of similar, where she went into the household, and there were some cousins or some aunts and uncles who didn't really approve of the adoption because it wasn't blood.
Right.
And it's like there's this weird stigma that, blood is thicker than water. And, I think we've all got family that we're sitting there saying, I wish they weren't blood,
Well, this is it. Our family, I have a completely different perspective now. Oh, and I'm so excited. I ordered a logo, and my tagline is change your perspective, change your life.
Yeah.
Everybody says change your mind, change your life. But it's really about changing your perspective.
Yeah.
So I have a totally different perspective now. And so what I understand, what I've been led to understand by everything I've studied and everything I've experienced and everything else, is that our family that we are born into, we have contracts with them. Like, we have contracts with all these people in our lives. And so before we incarnated, and we're getting really spiritual here. So before we incarnated, we were like, okay, well, I want to learn forgiveness. And so all these people came forward and said, I'll help you learn forgiveness.
Yeah.
And so they're like the people that hurt you.
Yeah.
And then you learn forgiveness. It's like, I know I had a contract with my mother because she didn't want me the minute I was conceived, didn't want me my whole life, doesn't want me now. I mean, she's still brutal.
Yeah.
But I love her unconditionally. And that's so powerful for me.
Yeah.
For me to have experienced, normally I'd be bawling my eyes out right now, feeling unloved by my mother, but I know I'm loved and wanted. And I know that she loved me so much in heaven that she said, I will help you learn forgiveness.
Yeah, yeah.
And I understand. She had a really hard life, and if I had not had her for a mother, I would never be doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And I love what I'm doing, and I would never have been driven to learn about the subconscious mind and learn self-development and learn about, the ego and all this cool stuff I know. So I have her to thank for all of it, really.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting way of looking at it, but I think it's the healthiest way I could look at it. I'm certainly not going to change her. Yeah. And, abracadabra, make some perfect relationship with her. I can't pull a relationship with her out of thin air.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's where she is, that she is doing the best she can. It doesn't seem like it, but that is the best she can do.
Yeah.
And it's sad, really, because she's in a lot of pain, but I've tried to help her a few times, and she had some kind of cool experiences doing hypnosis, but not willing to really. She just wants the magic pill. She's been popping pills for a long, long time. So yeah.
Now, I know you had said in the other show as well that you basically weren't wanted while in the womb. Can you talk about how that affects? Because obviously, most people when they're pregnant, they're over the moon thrilled about having children.
I don't know if I would say most. Can you imagine how many people in the world got pregnant by accident?
That's true.
There's a big world. We live in a very big world. I think most children aren't planned. And I think a lot of children aren't wanted. So, and there's also this, I have a set of children that I worked on, and the mother was completely stressed. Her first pregnancy, and that child is on the autism spectrum. And he had the full range of vaccines and all that, and that's a whole nother show that we, talking about these over vaccinations. He had tons and tons of vaccinations, and so he ended up with autism. Although he's super sweet, nice, sweet kid, I would never. Really smart and everything, and I don't know, they judge that and all that. But anyway, then she got pregnant by accident with her daughter, and she was so stressed because they were going through a change in business and a move, and they had this autistic son, and they were trying to figure all this other stuff out. So that daughter has a ton of fear because the mother was completely stressed that whole pregnancy.
Wow.
So and for me, I just felt that it was like being rejected while you're inside someone.
Yeah.
So it's like this, I think it just grew and grew, and that's like 9 months of rejection
Yeah.
just while I was developing, which is really crazy that I'm not more like deformed or something.
Yeah.
I'm actually quite healthy. But and then feeling rejected every day after that because my mother just couldn't help it. That was her way of being with me. She just hated that she was pregnant again. She didn't want to be pregnant again. And clearly she really didn't want to be pregnant again because there were no children after me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, my siblings and I wonder whether she wanted any of us, really. I don't think it was her choice necessarily to have the life she had, which is, she's 87 now. That was that generation.
Yeah.
You got married and not everybody, but in her situation.
Yeah.
She got married, had no education, just did whatever he said, and that was that. That was the kind of, and I made the decision actually in the womb not to have children. Because I was like, there's no way I'm going to treat somebody I love, take the chance of treating somebody I love the way I'm being treated right now.
Yeah.
And that was through my whole life. And then there's some stories from other hypnotherapists. I didn't have any clients like this, but there's a really amazing pair of stories of girls that were the parents tried to abort them, tried to terminate the pregnancy. And so in one case, the parents told her, they said, we want you to know from us and not to find out from anybody else. We tried to terminate the pregnancy, but you were so strong that you made it through. It didn't work, and you're born, and that's because you're amazing, and you're supposed to be something amazing and do amazing things in the world. She became like a human rights lawyer.
Oh my God.
Or like something really amazing.
Yeah.
And the other girl, she knew they tried to terminate her, and she made the belief, well, I'm nothing because they tried to terminate me.
Yeah.
So can you see how you could take the same experience and put it a different perspective from it? Because the other girl could have also decided, well, they tried to terminate me, I must be nothing. But she went the other way and children are extremely suggestible. They listen to what you say, they take it in, they make a belief, and plus actions, feelings, all of that's affecting children the whole time. So yeah, that's it's so interesting because like I know I've read studies too where so obviously like when you get stressed out, your body releases cortisol. Yeah.
And when you're pregnant, the effects that cortisol have on the fetus are crazy. And I've even like read studies about how if a mother is like really stressed out throughout the pregnancy, sometimes like the baby will be born and literally the part of the brain that does like the fight or flight, basically survival instincts, is actually larger than children that had, with their moms having a calm, collected, and peaceful pregnancy. Yeah. And so, I mean, like you were saying, it's even, in a physical manifestation of that as well. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because what's in the mind develops into the body follows the mind. So whatever you say to yourself, whatever you're envisioning, good or bad, because the mind doesn't know the difference between good or bad. It just knows what you're thinking. So imagine good things for yourself.
Yeah.
That's every law of attraction book. I mean, this is all like law of attraction. There's all these laws of the universe, like attracts like. Like I'm noticing and I'm looking back, I became aware that I was an empath, which means I feel other people's energies like a lot. And so growing up in a house of 8 people, I was feeling all these energies, and that's why I live alone now, and I like the calm, the peace. I like to go out and see people and have fun, and then I like to go back to my little sanctuary.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of my clients are empaths because they're attracted to me because of my empathic status, basically. Yeah. So, I developed the belief that I thought everybody was an empath, but I guess they say it's not so. So, so, and I'm like, God, what must it be like not to be an empath? I wouldn't even know. So, but it's really interesting. Another story popped into my mind about that stress, the stress thing, because we do have that part of us that is we have a hair trigger stress response because you need it. You actually need it when there's danger near, because this isn't technically a safe planet. There's stuff could happen.
Yeah.
A runaway truck could come down the road and you have to get out of the way, or like in my case, the bear could walk into your house and you have the door open for too long on a nice spring day. But there was a story about a man, again, this wasn't my client, just heard it from another hypnotherapist, who had this, he would just feel so stressed when he heard drumming. And so he was actually born in Nigeria, I think, or maybe Kenya, I don't remember. So he was born somewhere in Africa, out, not in a town, and his, people were coming with machetes and chasing his family down, and his mother went and hid in a shed, and when she was pregnant with him, and her heart was probably beating like a drum, and of course the people didn't find her, and she survived, and he was born, but he could not listen to drums, and so when he got regressed back, he's like, I don't see anything, but all I hear is drums, and I'm so stressed. Wow. And so, and he got that story from his mother. That,
oh my gosh.
She had been hiding in that place and being waiting to get killed, basically, and the heart beating so strong. So he would hear drums, and that's what happened. So
that's amazing too, because I know, I think it's, what is it, around 25 weeks or something is when you can start to hear outside of the belly. But every time, all before that, you hear your mom's internal organs, and any pregnant woman will tell you that that's absolutely true, because when you eat something and your food's digesting, your baby will start kicking around.
Right.
And it's, they used to think it was because of blood sugar, but now they know that, doesn't matter when you eat, the blood sugar is going to the baby, at the same pace the whole time, that it's actually them moving because of the sounds of digestion, which is interesting, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, those are the kinds of things that it's it's so intimate having, a person living inside of you,
right?
And all the things that they hear and they experience and they feel from the mom. Yeah. And, that has to have an impact. And I know there's this thing called Wonder Weeks. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No.
But it's the different developmental milestones that babies go through.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is when you're tracking it, so I've always done it with all my kids, because when they go through these developmental, milestones, they tend to be a lot more fussy. They, they're a lot more clingy.
The terrible twos or whatever.
Yeah,
they
and
call
there's,
it.
Usually the first one's around 2 months old, and then it's a few weeks later. But there's a bunch of them throughout the first 2 years.
Huh.
And every time that they go through it, it's a perception change. So it's now all of a sudden they can understand sequences.
Oh.
Or now they understand that what leaves their eyesight doesn't really go away. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Things like that. And so first of all, just imagine living in a world that's that chaotic.
Right.
That would
Sure.
just be crazy. And so that's why these babies get so fussy. They don't understand what's going on. They're scared. They're vulnerable.
Right. It's very scary.
And so, but what I thought was interesting was when you track that, you actually track it with the due date and not their birth date.
Oh.
And that's because they're developing from the moment, in the womb.
Right.
It's not, they don't start developing when they get born. They're developing in the womb. And so you have to track it based on the fertility cycle, basically.
Yeah.
And how long they've been in there versus when they're actually born, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. So something really cool just popped into my head. Yeah. So, do you know when babies are late being born? I've had people go back to that, and they want to have a session for procrastination.
Yeah.
And they go back to not wanting to come out.
Really?
Yes. Because
that'll be both my daughters. They were both a week late.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because they're it's so nice in here, and it sounds really scary out there, and I don't want to get... And one of my clients, he was all happy in the womb, and then he got really cramped because he was growing so much, and he's like, now let me out. Let me get out of here. And I don't remember what the story was with the birth, but it's really interesting. People will go back to that, And,
Wow.
and then it resolves their procrastination
Wow.
when they go back and see that they and it was funny. I asked my mother, I asked my parents, I was like, was I born late, early, or what? And my father asked my mother, and he was like, she doesn't remember. And I'm like, I mean, could you take like a couple minutes and maybe think
Right.
about it for me? Because I'm like asking this question that has to do with me, and you just don't. I mean,
Yeah.
I think she just probably sleepwalked through the whole pregnancy, like waiting, hoping it would be over soon.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh.
So yeah, that doesn't make me feel good, but the part of me that knows what was going on now has overcome the part of me that would feel hurt by that.
Yeah.
Which
yeah.
is very, very cool.
Yeah.
Because I've done a lot of stuff on that, and I just remember hearing something today. If you keep working on yourself, you assume you're broken. And I was like, oh, good, I can stop working on myself. Nobody's broken. We're all just, we all just have some confusion.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So yeah, that's interesting when you don't want to come out. It's like. And women will say that, like, this kid doesn't want to come out.
That's
and then
that's pretty much what we concluded too. It's like, the kid's so comfortable in there that they just don't want to come out yet.
Sure, yeah, especially if you have a loving mother who wants you, who's celebrating you. You're like, oh God, this is great. It's like I will hypnotize my oldest sister, who was the first one. She was the first, I was the last, and she's like, and I'm like, okay, if I need to take her back to the womb to find something else out or something, and I'm like, okay, so go to the womb, just imagine you're in the womb, and how is it? She's always like, oh, it's warm and calm and peaceful, and I'm like, God, really? That was not my experience at all. So it's different for everyone. And the like people who are given up for adoption, and especially if they weren't adopted by somebody good and they lived in foster homes, they have huge problems. Yeah. Huge problems. And it's really interesting. When I lived in the LA area for a brief time, I ran across this woman who ran this program to check on kids that had been in foster homes. And she said, yeah, we look for success stories, and we can't find them. They usually end up in jail or ODing or on drugs or criminals. Yeah, because the belief that they get is, I must be bad. Yeah. I must be bad because I'm not wanted by my own blood. I've been given away. That means they don't want me. I'm some kind of hideous monster. That and so when you have a belief, I'm bad, you do bad. Yeah. Your mind must make you do bad. Yeah. I mean, not always, but it's very common. Yeah. And that's a real drive of mine, is to help people who didn't feel wanted, just because that was my experience. Yeah. And luckily, I was kept, but I wasn't given up and given away to a foster home or something. But and some people are like, well, I was adopted by a family who loves me, but some people will still have the belief I'm not wanted, even if they are wanted by their adoptive family, because what matters is the biological. So a lot of back pain, because your spine is your support. A lot of people will develop back pain or not. Like a client of mine went back to being, like, when I did the little 30-minute consultation before we did the session, I said, tell me about your childhood. He said, well, I was adopted. I was like, you could stop right there. Yeah. You can stop right there, because that's how I know you didn't feel supported, and that's why you have it was spinal stenosis. It's like a tightening of the casing around the back, like I'm not going to be able to describe it well, because it's not I'm not a medical doctor, but it's a narrowing of the thank you mind narrowing of the spinal canal, and you get pain, and it's stiff. And so so what he told me was he was given up by his biological mother, and he was in foster care for a year, and when his adoptive mom found him, he was like, like failure to thrive. He was like gray. Nobody had been touching him or taking care of him. And so he really, like, first of all, for 9 months in the womb, and then for a year, not being held, not being cared for, not feeling loved. And so the belief was still, and then he said he made attempts to reconnect with his biological mother, and it didn't go well. It was it was bad. She wasn't, very
interested.
Well, I think she was interested enough to meet him, but they didn't hit it off or anything. Yeah. So, and I can go right into another story that's just popping right into my mind. So I one of my friends in one of my classes I did, she was adopted. And she always had anxiety. So she always had anxiety, and she would try to talk to her adoptive mom about her real mom and about being adopted. And her adoptive mom was like, no, we're not going to talk about it. And they looked similar, so they wouldn't talk about it. And she had a brother who was also adopted. And then when she was older, and she always had anxiety, terrible anxiety. And when she found her birth mom, the anxiety went away.
Wow.
And when I did a session with her, when I regressed her, she's like, I've just been born. My mom wants me. She was 15. She wanted to keep the baby. And she's like, they're tearing me out of my mother's arms. She was like screaming and crying. And I was like, kind of a beginner. And I was in my class, and the trainer was like, oh, yeah, you got it. Just keep going. I'm like, oh, my God. She's like having a freaking meltdown.
Yeah.
But it's like you have to, in that kind of therapy, you're supposed to go through those emotions because it's healing to feel them one last time. I'm not sure how I feel about that anymore, but it was very, kind of alarming. But it was so interesting that when she found her birth mom again, and anytime she was with her, the anxiety would be gone.
Wow.
And then 10 years after that, her birth mom died of cancer, and the anxiety came back.
Oh.
So in the baby mind, it's like my mom wants me, but she can't keep me, and then finds her again, the anxiety goes away, and then she dies, and the anxiety came back.
Yeah.
And so after we did that session, the anxiety was gone because she saw where it came from.
Yeah.
So it's,
oh my gosh.
it's your mind. Your mind just knows everything.
Yeah.
The mind supposedly knows everything from the moment of conception too. So with the science of the different things, I mean, I've gone back. I've been regressed to the womb multiple times, and I don't know necessarily how many months along I was or anything, but I remember hearing and feeling what everybody was saying. And as an empath, I'm going to feel everybody around me because I'm part of my mother, and everybody who's around her, I'm going to feel too. So yeah, it's pretty fascinating stuff. Yeah.
It's also interesting because I know when you're pregnant, you actually have your child's stem cells float throughout your own blood cells in your body.
Wow.
Which is how they do, like, they'll take your blood and they can see, the genetic chromosomal makeup of your child.
Wow.
And it's all from your blood, but that's because your baby's stem cells are floating through your own body.
Wow.
So it's like, that's how connected we are to our moms. We're literally in their blood. Yeah. Which is so crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go one step further with that. Again, it's coming right into my mind. So it's so interesting what's going on right now with all the masks and all the virus and everything else. But so we are literally breathing each other in and out all day long. Yeah. Literally. Because we are sloughing off like dead skin. That's what dust is.
Yeah, the dead skin cells.
If we showed if we put a light in here to show the dust flying through the air.
Which we don't want to do.
Right. No, but that's the thing. People are like, ew, gross, that person. It's like, you have that person inside you. Like, I remember I have this one, I think I mentioned it last time too, because I love this series. It's called Magical Mind, Magical Body by Deepak Chopra. And he's like, you have Genghis Khan and, Gandhi and all these people inside you because we are literally all a part of each other. Yeah. Literally. Yeah. We're breathing each other in and out. And people think that's disgusting, but hey, you clean and clean and clean, and you try to clean that dust. Yeah. That dust is there. Yeah. And it is not going away. And that's I think in a way that's a good way to see that we are literally part of each other, that, if you hurt someone else, that is really hurting part of you. Yeah. And so there's no need for the competition and, us and them. There's no us and them. There's only us. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess to kind of go back a little bit to the pregnancy portion of this, but so hypnobirthing is a very common, it's gaining a lot of popularity. Yeah. Now, it's something that I've always wanted to do, and to be honest with you, every time I'm pregnant, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll get to it, and then 9 months flies by, and I'm like, oh, I never got to it. But
Right.
but I've heard a lot of people that have done it, and I've heard a lot of really great stories about people who did it, and it's like they went through this totally peaceful birthing experience. Their pregnancy was so peaceful, they loved it. And then I've also heard the other end, where I've actually heard people that said that they were so calm that they felt like they just missed the whole birthing experience. Like it just went by and they didn't even experience it.
Huh, interesting.
And I was like, that's interesting too. So I was wondering kind of what your take on was with both of those, and just kind of like how hypnobirthing works, and
sure.
Kind of some of the benefits of that during pregnancy and with childbirth in general.
Right. So it all goes back to the messages you're giving to your mind, the images. The mind loves images. It's an image making machine. Like people say, I can't visualize. I'm like, oh, that must be really hard when you go to a big mall and you park your car, you can never find it again. They're like, oh no, I can find it. So your mind is visualizing where you parked.
Yeah.
And so your mind is visualizing all the time. And then, maybe when you try to visualize something, and I think that's interesting, it's different people have different experiences of this. Like when I do timeline therapy, I'm like, okay, tell me, if you were to point in the direction of the past, where would you point? And I'll just ask you that. Where would you point if I asked you, where's the past?
Back there.
Okay, perfect, yeah. And where is the future?
There.
Okay, yeah, so most people say the past is behind and the future is forward, or, left and right. And then some people are like, well, the past is right here, and you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And the future, I can't even see it. So that the past is really affecting them so much that we have to clear some of that away so that they can then envision the future. I think I was like that for a really long time. But now I can envision the future more and more. I get better and better and better at it.
Yeah.
Because it's all practice. It's all repetition. So with hypnobirthing and having, imagining yourself having this great pregnancy, that is all the messages you give to your mind. And so some people are super, super suggestible. Like you can watch YouTube videos of people like the guy goes sleep and they're out. They're out. They're that. And there's a small percentage of those people. I don't think it's a very large percentage. I don't remember the exact number. Most people are middle of the road. And then they're the people who are resistant. They're absolutely hypnotizable. They just won't allow it because all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. It's all how deep you want to go. So some people resist, and then they get more into it, and then they get deeper. And other people are like, they're out from the word go. They're real easy. So what you do with any kind of hypnosis with that, imagining yourself having a really healthy pregnancy, you would, if say you were getting pregnant again and you say, okay, I want a really healthy pregnancy and I want this beautiful little, boy or girl, and I don't know if you can predict their eye color or anything, but but I would say, okay, so what are your desires? Okay, I want to sleep through the night. I want to eat, really healthy, and I want to eat these specific things, and I want to feel comfortable and just feel all this love for this child. And you write all that down, and then if there's any obstacles to that, you would do a hypnosis session to find out what's getting in the way of that great pregnancy. And then you would give the recording, which has you imagining, and it can be anywhere from 10 minutes. It usually takes a little while to relax. You do an induction, like 5 minutes, and then 10 minutes of, beliefs and envisioning your beautiful baby and having this great healthy pregnancy. And again, it's all just suggestions you're giving your mind. If instead you didn't do the recording and you're like, oh, what if, something happens? What if I get sick? What if this happens? What if that happens? And so you're giving your mind the image that you don't want. And so that's what people don't understand about the law of attraction. You can imagine all the good things, but if in the back of your mind the subconscious is like, yeah, but that's, you're not good enough, and you don't deserve that because, you weren't wanted, or, it's got all that's running subconsciously. But if you did do the hypnosis and you've gotten pregnant and you're happy and you really want this baby and you're having this great life and this great relationship, and you just imagine yourself having a healthy pregnancy, that will be more likely to happen. And then with the hypnobirthing, again, you imagine a really easy birth. But yeah, I can see how some people would be so relaxed and so suggestible that they would just, it would just go by. And personally, I think that would probably be a good thing to just, get that over with. It's supposed to be really painful and everything. But yeah, it's we're all unique.
Mm-hmm.
You never know, like one person's going to want something different, and some people, no matter what you do, they're never happy.
Yeah.
If they had a really easy birth, they're like, well, I missed it and I didn't, whatever. But it's like, well, but yay, you have a healthy baby and you're healthy and everything was good. So yeah, it's just,
Yeah, I'll say that there's definitely different feelings. So I guess I'll kind of like share my experiences.
Sure.
But actually, our first pregnancy ended up in a miscarriage.
Mm-hmm.
And the situation at the time, I mean, we were definitely not ready for a baby, even though we both wanted that baby. But we were living with my husband's parents, and you know
that
all
would
about
not
them,
be good.
so you can imagine the kind of stress that was under. But yeah, that was a really tough time, and so we ended up miscarrying, and then shortly after that, we moved out and got our own place. And then we got a dog to kind of help fill that, because when you miscarry, it's like in my opinion, it's like when I became pregnant the first time was when I became a mom.
Yeah.
And then to not have that child to pour that love into was just like devastating.
Yeah.
So we ended up getting a dog, which was actually in the same month that we were supposed to be delivering the baby.
Yeah.
And so we got the dog. And then a couple of years later, we ended up getting pregnant with Cass, who's my first daughter, who's now 2 years old. And that whole pregnancy, I actually had night terrors.
Wow.
For like the first half of it at least, where I would basically dream that I would wake up in a pool of blood, because that's what happened with the first miscarriage.
Right.
And so I was like so terrified the whole time that I wasn't gonna get my baby this time, you know?
Yeah.
And I kept telling myself, I'm like, I can do this, my body's made for this. But back in, obviously in the back of my mind, I still had this thought that it's probably not gonna happen, you know?
Yeah.
And luckily it did.
Mm-hmm.
But again, even though I kept filling myself with these thoughts of like, I'm gonna have like a home birth, that's what we were planning, and I'm a healthy person, I've had a pretty decent pregnancy, there's no reason, why I can't have my home birth. Well, I ended up in a hospital transfer, ended up with the epidural, ended up with a vacuum birth. Like, I literally was minutes from being rushed into an emergency C-section.
Wow.
The whole thing was so traumatizing.
Right.
And at the end of it, even though it's like you just went through this horribly traumatizing experience, I was so just grateful that I had a healthy baby.
Yeah.
And then, but it took me, after that, I was like terrified of getting pregnant again for like months.
And listen to the words you're using, like terrifying.
Well, that's
traumatic.
how I felt.
Yeah. Yeah, because when you have that experience of the miscarriage and all that blood, there was a death.
Yeah.
And the mind is like, death, bad. We don't want that. That's scary.
Yeah.
You could have died, and it's your mind's job is to keep you alive, even more so than your baby.
Yeah.
So having those night terrors, if that was the image running through your mind, that would totally happen. Yeah, absolutely. So that's the difference between focusing on what you wanted, which you were trying to do, and the power of the mind, which is like, remember that big pool of blood?
Yeah.
So that's what, that was what was
And it was
going
interesting, too, because in the hospital, after my daughter was delivered, she actually ended up in the NICU for like 3 days. But I ended up hemorrhaging.
Yeah.
And I hemorrhaged, I think, like twice the amount of, like I think they said it was like 400 IUs or whatever is considered hemorrhaging. And at one point they had measured me and I was at 800. And they were actually they were like minutes from sending me into the emergency room to like start doing some surgeries and DNCs and to try to basically stop me from bleeding. Yeah. So it was interesting that I had that, repetitive dream of bleeding out. And after the birth, I basically bled out,
Yeah.
Which was interesting.
For sure. So it's a combination of, and I'm just wondering what you were thinking after you had the miscarriage. Anything like, wow, that was really scary, I don't want to go through that again, maybe I don't want to have a baby, or...
So honestly, after the miscarriage, I went into a horrible depression. And
Sure.
I really got to the point where it was like, why? Because I've always wanted to be a mom.
Yeah.
Ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a mom. So to be, and I had a miscarriage at 14 weeks. So it was further along than it, it's not like I just found out I was pregnant and then a week later I, bled and that was it.
Right.
It was like my body basically went into labor. And the baby had stopped developing weeks before, so there was no baby.
Right.
But the placenta that came out was like golf ball size. I mean, it was a pretty decent, or like tennis ball. It was a pretty decent size.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, but after that happened, I got to a point where I was like, I don't think I want to be on this planet anymore. Like, that's kind of where I was at.
Sure.
And it really took, it's going to sound crazy, but it really took moving out of the house, really flushing, like having a whole new scenery.
Yes.
Getting the dog something that I could kind of take care of and, almost pretend like that was my baby, as crazy as that sounds.
Oh, no. Our animals are babies for sure. My cat's totally my baby. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He comes and snuggles like a baby in my arms,
Yeah.
He's my baby. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that having had all of that trauma would still replay in your mind unless you do something like meditation or hypnosis or and again, hypnosis is the most powerful because you're being guided back to the thing that's blocking the thing. Again, trying to keep you safe. It's trying to keep you alive.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, if she gets pregnant again, that might happen.
Yeah.
And it was like so close. Did it make you hesitate to get pregnant again?
Well, oh yeah, for a while.
Yeah.
And to me, I think the biggest comfort to me was finding out that so many women had gone through it.
Yeah.
Because it's something that a lot of women don't talk about is miscarriage. And so to, reach out and hear all these different miscarriage stories. And it was like, my mom had 2 miscarriages and, friends at work at all had miscarriages. And, apparently it wasn't this big, uncommon thing.
It's very,
very
super common.
Yeah.
Super common.
And so to me, that made me feel a little bit better, at least, because it's like, all right, maybe it's not something I did. Maybe it's not my fault. Maybe there's,
Okay, so yeah, you're making it your fault.
Yeah.
And so that's,
and it's something that, maybe it won't happen again because it's just a random thing. And, women can have children after having miscarriages. And I was also diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome when I was a teenager, which I've actually completely reversed all my symptoms and have been symptom free for 5 years or so, which is great.
Yeah.
But
so all healing is in the mind.
Yeah.
Because you wanted to be a mom so much with that. And did you ever stop your periods with the PCOS?
So probably. What I would say is my periods were always super irregular. So I could either have one for 14 days, twice a week, or twice a month.
Yeah.
Or I could go 3 to 4, to 5 months without having one. So it was always very irregular. There was no rhyme or reason to how it worked. And then my doctors put me on birth control basically to regulate it because it was crazy.
Give you a fake period to regulate the period.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
So I was on birth control for years, and then finally I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I remember I went to my doctor, and I said, I think I'm going to try to regulate my period naturally. Yeah. And I said, I'm not going to do the birth control anymore. And I remember she just told me, she said, by this age, because I was 19, they said, by this age, usually whatever your period is what it's going to be for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So she said, if you want to try to do, your stuff, you can. But just know that when you need their birth control again, just call me up and I'll prescribe it.
I love when they do that because they make these pronouncements. I remember, I think it was one of my sisters that told me that, when I first got pregnant, they told me that I would probably have a C-section because, my uterus is weird. It's like, what does that even mean? How do they even know? Maybe it's just yours. Yeah. It doesn't mean it's weird. That's where comparison gets us in trouble. Your uterus is not going to look like anybody else's because it's yours. Yeah. And she did have a C-section. Wow. And they plan C-sections now. Because the doctor wants to go golfing. Yeah. I mean, it is unconscionable.
I think they say, 1 out of every three births in New York City is a planned C-section. Yeah. Which is just bizarre to me. I don't get it. But But yeah, it was interesting because, like those were my birthing experiences. And then, I just obviously gave birth on February 12th was when my newest daughter was born. And her pregnancy was totally different.
Yeah.
So I remember with Cass, I was trying to do like everything by the book because I was like so afraid that, if I do something wrong, it's not going to happen. So I was like, don't eat fish, don't eat this, like, like the whole craziness. And then this time around, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to listen to my body. Like, my body knows what it's doing. And I'm just like, women have been creating babies forever. Like, it's not that complicated.
Yeah.
And I'll just listen to my body. And whatever my body's telling me is what I'll do.
Yeah.
And I literally, like, I didn't take any prenatals. I, like, didn't avoid any foods, really. I mean, I don't drink coffee. Like, there were some things, like, obviously I'm not going to, if somebody was smoking, I stay a little extra away from them.
Yeah.
Or, I don't drink, so it's not like, you know what I mean? The obvious ones. But, for the most part, I was like, I'm just going to do whatever feels natural because that's probably what my body needs me to do.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. I didn't have any, like, nausea. Like, I literally didn't even have morning sickness. I remember with Cass, I had so much morning sickness that I, like, gave up. I, like, went to my doctor. I was like, just give me, like, medication because I can't handle this anymore.
Sure.
And my midwives had said, well, go and just, like, ask them for diclegis because it's supposed to be a safer, thing. And I remember I went into my, OBGYN and I said, I want to be put on diclegis because that's what my midwives have said is, like, the safest. And I feel comfortable with that. It's like a B vitamin based, thing.
Yeah.
I said, but I just, like, I can't, like, do this whole nausea thing anymore. And I remember the doctors just said, well, we don't do diclegis here. We do Zofran. So you're going to be put on Zofran. And she started writing out a prescription. And I said, well, what are the side effects of that? And she was like, well, like, here's a whole sheet of, like, the side effects for you and for the baby.
Yeah.
And I said, well, hold on. This is going to affect the baby? And they were like, well, possibly. Like, these are the possible side effects. And I was like, all right, well, then don't write your prescription because I'm not taking that. Like, that's not something I feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
And I didn't. And then luckily enough, like 2 weeks later, the nausea went away. But it was just interesting. Like, with Heidi, I did not have any nausea. Like, maybe for a couple of weeks, I had a little nausea where I just had to drink a little ginger ale to help out, but...
Yeah.
Really, that was it. It was so easy. I never had, like, the extreme fatigue. I remember when I was pregnant with Cass, I was, like, on the couch literally all 9 months. I was just exhausted.
Yeah.
And this time it's like I had a toddler. I should have been exhausted, but I was chasing her around and playing and, up until, like, the last month, basically, because once you get, once you're, like, 50 pounds heavier, it's kind of hard, but, But it was just interesting. And I got my home birth. We did a home birth in the apartment. And, obviously no anesthesia or anything.
Wow.
And, and it was funny. So to kind of go back to the whole hypnobirthing, like missing, those women who said that they missed the birth.
Yeah.
And, the idea like, well, if it was that easy, would you really want to miss it? I'll say, so I had the two experiences, right? Because the first one I did have the epidural.
Yeah.
So I pushed out a baby with an epidural, and I've pushed out a baby without one.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, pushing it out without one is 1,000 times, like, harder in the sense that it's so much more painful.
Oh, yeah.
But you can actually feel everything.
Wow.
And that's such it's such an incredible experience. I was actually thinking about that while driving over here today, which was weird. I was driving over here. I'm like, that was just so cool. Like, like at the time it didn't feel cool. I remember even telling my midwives, I was like, why did I want this?
Yeah,
Because it's like, this is so hard. Like, it hurts so bad. But like after the fact, looking back on it, knowing that like I literally like I screamed while like the entire time. Literally our neighbors brought over a baby gift a few days later, and I'm like, oh, I guess everyone knows we had our baby. Like,
oh yeah, the screaming.
In the middle of the night.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
But it was just interesting because it was like, I literally like screamed her out, But now when I look back on it, it's like when I talk about it, I feel like, oh, I was like a mama lion roaring the baby out. You know what I mean? It's like that kind of strength and just empowering.
Yeah.
And I honestly, like, even though it was so like painful and hard, I wouldn't want to have missed it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I've had both experiences. I've had the epidural, and I know what that's like, and I would honestly never do that again.
It's just numb, right?
Yeah.
You're just numb.
And you don't feel it, and you don't feel like, I don't know, something happens when you feel yourself pushing your child into the world.
And if I'm not mistaken, don't you get flooded with oxytocin?
Yes.
The minute the baby's born?
Yes.
And so you're flooded with the love hormone,
mm-hmm.
and you're just in seventh heaven when you have so. I wonder if they. I watched a YouTube about a guy who went around following people around. I think I might have mentioned it last time too. This always comes up, that he was taking everybody's blood to see what their oxytocin levels were.
Oh, really?
And he took he found a bridal party, and they let them. They all let him take their blood. And he said the bride's oxytocin was off the charts.
Oh, my God.
Because it was all about her. She's the center of attention, and everybody's there giving her gifts, looking at her.
Yeah.
And, so beautiful in the pretty white dress and the flowers and everything. And so I wonder if they would take a mother's blood right after she gave birth, and the oxytocin was crazy. Yeah, because I had a client who she actually had cancer while she was
mm-hmm.
pregnant, and so she didn't have chemo,
mm-hmm.
and then the cancer didn't grow while she was pregnant and while she was nursing.
Wow.
And then as soon as she stopped nursing, it grew, and I was like, oxytocin.
Yeah.
Because when you're pregnant and nursing, you're always being flooded with oxytocin because you have this connection, this baby, and the one-on-one connection of breastfeeding.
Yeah.
So, and it was the oxytocin that kept the cancer from growing.
And you wonder why they shove people with chemotherapy instead of just shooting up some oxytocin.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, we talk about Western medicine and what it does all day, but medicine many years ago was designed to be a short-term solution while you figured out the root cause. But of course, they can't figure out the root cause because the root cause is emotional. Yeah. So medicine has become just a huge business now. Yeah. Pharmaceuticals especially, but Western medicine too. They the doctors writing you this prescription that you don't want, right? And they're getting pissed because you don't want what they have. Yeah. Even though you have a list of side effects that you're like, I'm not going to do that to myself or my baby. Yeah. And they don't understand it because doctors have always had a ton of power. But you have to do like you did and just take matters into your own hand. Listen to your body. If we all just listen to our bodies, there would be almost no need for medicine. Yeah. Or supplements. Yeah. I mean, just listen to your body. It's like when you go shopping for food, you look at the food and you're like, how do I feel about this food? Is this food going to be good for me? Is it going to, do good things for my body? Is it going to nourish me? Or is it, and it can be something, it might be something that's considered healthy, but it might not be good for you. Yeah. Some kind of vegetable that gives you gas because you don't have the enzymes to digest it, whereas this other vegetable might be better for you. So I'm talking about that, not just not eating the sugar-laden cereal versus the fruits and vegetables or whatever. So listening to your body and your intuition and that, and again, when you clear out the subconscious of lots of different blocks, and childhood programming has so much to do with all of this too. Again, did your mother have any? You said your mother had miscarriages, or one? Yes,
she had two, and actually one of them was right before she was pregnant with me. So I do wonder, because that one was, so I have an older brother, then there was the miscarriage, and then there was me, and then younger brother, and then there was a miscarriage, and then my sister, which is interesting that they happened right between both daughters, and then younger brother and younger brother. So that is actually kind of interesting. It did happen between, right before both daughters.
So what I'm getting is there was something about being afraid about having a girl, maybe, because if we're treated a certain way because we're a woman, and then we worry that that's going to happen to our daughter, that can affect. Yeah. Can you see how that might affect? Yeah. So, all of our beliefs come in. I mean, throughout the generations, men have been more valued. God knows why. Yeah. But I mean, really, and that's it's kooky because without women, there would be no men. Yeah. Because the women have to have the babies, but we're treated as less than. Yeah. And I have this one person I know who's always talking about like women can't compete with men, and I'm like, why are we competing? Like, who's competing?
Yeah.
Like, should be no need for competition. We all have our unique thing that we do.
Yeah.
And we're not supposed to be just like somebody else. You try to be like somebody else, and it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, yeah.
you know, I mean, and that happens a lot in families. Like, the father wants the son to be just like him, and he's this totally different person. And the father ends up, you know, hating him for not carrying on the family line or family name or the family business. And it's like, we're not supposed to be just like you.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be totally different.
Yeah.
It's this like this old archaic idea. You know, what if we were all the same, a bunch of robots? How boring would that
Right,
be?
exactly.
You know, we're all supposed to be unique.
Yeah.
We are all unique, and if you deny it, you know, I mean, even this microphone, like, they made another one, and there isn't another one that's exactly like this one.
Yeah.
Even a machine doesn't make it exactly like it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So you got to get that stuff out of your head.
Yeah.
You know? Just and so where are we at? Because what came to my mind next was like what you should tell your kids, like once they're born, once you've had, you know, the hypnobirthing and the hypnotherapy for having a good pregnancy, and hypnobirthing and having a great birth, and then you know, of course, giving your child, I mean, humans just really aren't very good at unconditional love, but trying to love them unconditionally and letting them be who they are, and just listening to them, because a lot of times kids will have gifts that seem totally crazy, and you know, there's all kinds of evidence and all kinds of stuff out there about kids remembering a past life and saying, like, I was so-and-so in a past life, and they actually know all these things about the person, but most parents will be like, oh, that's silly, that didn't happen, that's not true, and all that, and they shut them down. And now there's all this evidence of that. But then, like, some kids see angels, how cool is that?
Yeah.
And their parents are like, no, that's not true. And their, you know, imaginary friends are really like their angel that's sitting with them. So I think I'm not a mother of a human child, but if I were, I wouldn't have been a good mother till now.
Yeah.
Till I know all this stuff. And even now I'd be like, oh my God, I'm responsible for this person's beliefs. Like, oh my God, that's just so much pressure. But I would tell them to be themselves, to do what they love, find what they love, try different things. And if one thing, you try it and you don't like it, that's fine. That's great.
Yeah.
Because you know you don't like that. You can, you know, forget it.
Something else.
Yeah, try something else. And so it's like we're living on this like giant buffet of trying fun things, and you know, what you're supposed to do, and that's not for anyone else to say. And just to encourage them unconditionally. I think unconditional encouragement is really good, just helping them find something that they really love to do, because it's not about you know, getting the best grades in school and then going to college and getting some job that you work at for 40 years and then die. You know, it's supposed to be about. And now, you know, you could just there weren't podcasts 20 years ago. Were there? I don't think there were.
I don't think so either.
Now everybody has a podcast, you know, and it's so, have so much information and so much connection now, and you could just make up a job. And do something fun. And do something that you enjoy and that makes the world a better place, hopefully. So yeah, just lots of unconditional love, unconditional encouragement. Let them be themselves, support them, listen to them. You know, really be trustworthy when they tell you something. You know, be trustworthy. I confided in my father a little bit, and he like told everyone. It wasn't good. It wasn't good, but he told me some stuff, and I told people. So I got him back. No, dumb. But really, like, just to be a friend, be a friend to your child, you know, and when they do things, when they make mistakes. Everybody's got to learn somehow. They're not mistakes; they're just lessons. But to be unconditionally loving when they quote unquote screw up. You know, because we all make mistakes. Otherwise, we would not know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't just life doesn't get lived in a straight line. We go over here, we go over here, and we're all over the place, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and there's so many different parenting methods out there. And, you know, all the different things, there's like, you know, do you do cry it out? Do you do co-sleeping? Do you do, you know, attachment parenting? And do you, you know, try to make them more independent? There's like 1,001 different, you know, parenting, you know, ideologies. So I guess as somebody who, you know, deals with people who, you know, have traumas from their childhood, is there anything you can say that people should kind of steer clear from, or that you might have some sort of recommendations on what you would suggest as, you know, a better way to not really parent, but I guess how to go about some of those things?
Sure. So again, I mean, I think we're in a time now where, well, at least we should have understood now that we've won.
Yeah.
We have like beaten nature. I mean, not necessarily like the, you know, earthquakes and you know, disasters and things, but we live in climate controlled environments. We don't live in caves. And I mean, we are tribally wired. A child is, you know, so connected and everything. I think the co-sleeping is great, whereas other people would be like, there's no way. I mean, I just had a client go back to a memory where her father, she was 4 and she was terrified to sleep by herself. She was afraid of the dark, and who knows what that was about. That's a different session. But and she would always go and get in her parents' bed or sleep on their floor, and her father was done with that. She was 4, and he held the door closed so that she couldn't get out. And she was terrified of the dark when she was 4. So don't do that.
Yeah.
If they're terrified, try to make them feel safe, because that's and again, we all have to go through something. We all have to go through something. So you can't be a perfect parent. There's no perfect parent. There's no perfect child. There's no perfect grandparent. There's no perfect life. Like, who do you know that has a perfect life? Nobody.
Yeah, nobody.
Nobody has a perfect life. You cannot completely shield your children from, you know, mistakes and traumas and hurts. Everyone has to go through this stuff. But you can also, you know, be there for them and care for them. And you know, I'm no expert on parenting because I'm not a parent, but I know that if I were a parent, I would totally let my kids sleep with me, especially if they were scared. I mean, I have a friend, I think her kid, I remember her saying her kid was sleeping with her and he was like 12, and I was like, I think he should be in his own bed now. He's 12, you know what I mean? So it's like, how far do you take that?
Yeah.
I think at some point they should want to sleep on their own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's again, I'm not a parent, so I can't really speak to it. I just think you have to go with your heart. You know, listen to your intuition, listen to your heart, listen to your body, talk to them about it, and you know, just, you know, to be friends and to be a tribe, because it's the feelings of rejection and being pushed away, and you know, the door being held shut. That, I mean, that's what does the damage. But again, we all have to live through some kind of wounding, or we don't. I mean, again, you know, I made that contract with my mother to learn forgiveness, and woohoo, mission accomplished. Check that one off the list. You know, so we are all. You're not necessarily born into your tribe to have this perfect tribal experience and this beautiful. I mean, some people do, and that's beautiful. That was definitely not my experience. My family are basically a bunch of people I don't like. Yeah. And I'm an adult now, so I don't have to spend time with them if I don't want to. Yeah. It was a different time. My parents grew up in survival mode. They're still living in survival mode subconsciously. Yeah. Even though they have everything they could possibly want, you know. Yeah. So it's knowing that their little minds are so impressionable, you know, trying to give them good beliefs, you know, making sure they know they're loved. Yeah. And again, if you have adopted kids, at some point they may need some therapy or some, especially hypnotherapy, because they're still going to feel unwanted until they get it through to the subconscious mind that I was wanted. I'm here, so I know I'm wanted. Somebody wanted me, and the force that makes the universe wanted you, and it's the greatest thing you can be wanted by. So you know.
And to kind of touch on the adoption stuff, because I know that's one of the things that comes up is should you tell your children that they're adopted, especially if they were adopted as an infant?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to that?
They know. They know subconsciously.
Yeah.
That's why they don't feel good, because they feel, oh, well, my first experience was being given up.
Yeah.
So, and children are super suggestible. So you can, again, if I had kids, I'd go digging in their subconscious mind all the time to find out. But, so say I adopted a child.
Yeah.
I would probably, you don't even have to have them close their eyes. They're in hypnosis with their eyes open. So you could have them, I would probably have them close their eyes anyway, but you could say, go back to being in the womb. They don't, they're so they'll like, oh yeah, I can hear my parents saying they don't want me. Or like the father's long gone. It was just, a mistake. It was a not a good relationship to begin with, or it's a teenage mother or something. That the kids, they're so close to that experience that they remember it. They even remember it probably consciously.
Wow.
But yeah, kids are in hypnosis with their eyes open, so you can give them suggestions, like from a really young age. Like I'm in this group on Facebook that has all to do with like making money and being abundant and being a woman with a business, and some of the stories are really amazing, especially about kids. Like these women will teach their kids really young like how to manage money, and to think of money as a good thing that supports your life, and that it's not like the root of all evil or bad, or like some stupid thing that somebody made up in the church a million years ago. And the kids will come up with these really cool ideas and like make their college fund in a couple of years. And it's like, well, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you do that? Teach them how to make money and how to, it's like, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for life.
Yeah.
So teach them things. I mean, one was like, for my daughter's 18th birthday, I'm taking her out, and then we're going to go to a financial advisor, and I'm going to set her up. I'm like, can I be your daughter?
Right.
Because I wish what I got, my father's financial advice was, your husband will take care of you.
Yeah.
No husband. So I had to, you know what? And that's another thing. Everything happens for a reason. I'm so grateful that I have figured some stuff out, all on my own. And it's with my beliefs and the way I manage money, because he'll stop doing it and then he'll do it again. Usually his first question to me when we talk on the phone is, how's your bank account? It's not like, are you happy, or how are things going? It's like, how's your bank account? And I'm like, finally, it used to trigger the crap out of me, years ago or whatever, or not even that long ago. And then I had a shift, and it doesn't bother me anymore. But the last time he asked it, I said, why do you always ask that? Like, why is that always your first question? And it was so interesting. He goes, well, we're more alike than we are different. And I'm like, that's funny you should say that, because I think I am your opposite.
Yeah.
You're male, I'm female. You became a doctor, I do alternative health kind of stuff. You had 6 kids, I have none. You had 3 houses, I have, now I finally have a house.
Yeah.
But all this stuff to worry about, and he made all this money, and he's still worried about money, because he's asking me about money, and everything is a projection. Yeah. So I'm like, you know what? I'm actually fine, and I don't work 24 hours a day like you used to, because I just kind of want to be. Yeah. Is it okay if I be for a while, just be for a while, and then like down the road I have my huge busy business? And he's like, he just can't get it, because he's so stuck in survival mode. Yeah. That he can't understand just like sitting still and being. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And it's like, and we live in a world now where you're actually allowed to just like sit and be. Yeah. Sometimes. I mean, not always. And then I have all kinds of ideas that I want to do. Yeah. But I'm not going to beat myself up because I'm not working every minute. Yeah. And so maybe that's just my time of rest and rejuvenation. And I get ideas all the time and write them down. And someday all of that, like one of them or a bunch of them, will come to fruition. And we have plenty of money. Yeah. But it's I think it's important to know, like, what I know is that I'm always being taken care of. Like, money's always been there for me.
Yeah.
I've always been able to pay my bills. I don't think I've been late on a bill in my life.
Yeah.
Maybe like once, like
Yeah.
by mistake because I didn't know about it or
Yeah.
something. So money has always been there. So you
Mm.
have to remind yourself of all the good that has come to your life. Like, and it's funny, my father used to say, you'll be all right. And that was good programming.
Yeah.
Like, I've always been all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it'd be nice to be better than all right,
Yeah.
but it's also really good to be all right.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are not all right.
Yeah.
You know.
No, absolutely. I do have to hop into some of these.
Oh, sure.
I just realized I'm like, I completely forgot to do those because we're in the conversation.
Yeah.
But we're going to hear from Elated Canine. So Elated Canine Training and Pet Services LLC is here for your family's pets' needs. We work with all ages and breeds. We run day training in our home while you're at work, private lessons at your home, group lessons, and a few other tailor-made services. Please contact Jocelyn at 603-479-7253 or on our website at elatedcanine.com for more information. We can't wait to help both you and your pup find the happy, healthy relationship you're searching for. And then we'll also go ahead and just do this one as well, which is Homefront Firearms Training. For some of the best training that you'll get in the Northeast, Homefront Firearms Training is offering 10% off a private lesson with code HOME10 when you register, and you can go to www.homefrontft.com. And so we'll hop right back in because I know you were saying you and your dad are like totally different. Do you think that some of the programming that you got as a child is what's made you so different versus like the programming that maybe he got as a child, or why do you think you guys are so different?
Well, I think he wanted all of his kids to be doctors. I don't know. I just kind of always had that sense.
Yeah.
And he was, born on a farm, one of 11 children. And his father always said he'd never amount to anything because boys don't cry, which is total bullshit, right? We know that. Like, men are sensitive and they can cry. And, and my dad's like kind of very sensitive guy. He's very much kind of cries a lot. Still cries to this day, over that stuff. And so he would get me jobs in like nursing homes, like changing diapers and stuff.
Yeah.
And I would talk to the nurses, and they were the biggest bunch of jaded, unhappy, negative, and nobody got better.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody got better. They were just laying there, basically waiting to die with us taking care of them. And I am, he got me jobs at other hospitals and stuff, and I was like, this is a world that I don't want to be a part of.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that happened was while I was in my lovely marriage, that didn't last. I was so stressed because I was just feeling kind of totally not heard, and he was recreating his parents' marriage, which was not good.
Yeah.
And so I was super stressed. So I got really. I had a lot of digestive problems. I wasn't listening to my gut. Actually, that leads into it. Like, I was walking down to get married to him, and my gut was like, run away, go, don't do it, run far, far, far away. And I didn't listen. So, and I went to my nurse practitioner when I had this IBS, which was like alternating diarrhea and constipation. It was lovely.
Yeah.
And always feeling upset to my stomach, not knowing what to eat. And she gave me some tabs that would, like, you put under your tongue and it would stop the diarrhea for a while. And she goes, I hope it clears up. And I was like, that's all you got?
Yeah.
Really, that's it? That's all you have? And that was like the break with Western medicine.
Yeah.
I was like, I will never trust Western medicine again.
Yeah.
Once I heard that. And then it was funny, my friend, I had acupuncture years before for I think I hurt my ankle, or a good friend gave me some acupuncture, and I loved it. And then I had a sore ankle, and I had this wonderful acupuncturist who taught me how to press my own pressure points and do acupressure myself. So I didn't need him anymore, which was great. Not good business sense in his part, but he had tons of clients, so he didn't need me. Yeah. And then, when I had the IBS, my friend sent me to an acupuncturist somewhere over in Western New Hampshire, and New London area, I think, and that helped. But what I realized, it was the marriage creating the problems. And so, sorry, I missed your question. But yeah, no, so I'd followed alternative medicine because I think every time something was wrong, I knew not to trust Western medicine because I had seen it firsthand, to the biggest degree I wanted to, really.
Yeah.
And then my dad, who was a doctor, would say, you'll be all right. So I was like, well, why, if the pills worked, he would like give us pills or take us to the hospital or give us exams or whatever. And a good doctor will tell you all they do is manage symptoms. That's the best they can do, is manage your symptoms. They don't find a cure. And I remember once I think a doctor said to me when I was on acupuncture, she's like, well, what do you cure? And I was like, what do you cure?
Yeah, exactly.
He had no answer, But they have strong drugs. Like one of my friends told me about bringing a man back to life with steroids. And I was like, okay, 96, really? Do you think that was an appropriate use of drug therapy? So, it was like the split. So I think once I did that, and then, not wanting to have the same experience I had as a child, like having all these children, whereas my father was one of 11 and he wanted all these kids. So it's like there's a lot of conflict in the mind, and that's what causes the problems. Like, you can't hold conflicting beliefs. So if your mind says I'm worthless, your subconscious mind says I'm worthless, but you want to make all this money, you won't. You can make it, but you'll lose it. And that, leads me again to another story. So this man called me. I never got to work on him. I was so bummed. But he was referred from another client, and he had made multiple millions 3 times and lost it all 3 times.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes, multiple, like multi-millions.
Give me his luck.
Right, yeah. So he could make it.
Yeah.
He just couldn't keep it. It was like the first was all in real estate, and then his partners took it all, and then it was always some story, and then another one, and they had an ex-wife who took all his money, and then the third one, I don't remember. And so I said, just give me the brief rundown of your childhood. And he said, well, my stepfather was abusive, and my mother didn't protect me, and I just got out of there as soon as I could. And I said, well, what about your biological father? And he said, I don't know, but it might have been my grandfather.
Oh, my gosh.
So he was very possibly the product of incest. But either way, if you don't know who your father is, you say, I'm not worth him even knowing me.
Yeah.
So you make a belief about yourself. I'm worthless if the father's not around. Now, if you're a product of incest, I'm bad.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really bad. I'm not worth less than nothing.
Yeah.
Because he was now, not only was he broke, but he was like heavily in debt, like living on somebody's couch.
Wow.
And he had been a multimillionaire. So he could be a billionaire. He would still lose it. His mind would find some way for him to lose it, because his belief is, I'm worth less than nothing. I'm bad. I'm worth less than nothing. I have no father. That means I'm worthless. Which, of course, it doesn't. But that's the subconscious belief. So that's an example of not being able to hold conflicting beliefs. I want lots and lots of money, be rich and comfortable and have a great life. You're worthless. Boom, which one wins? Subconscious wins every time.
Wow. So now if somebody has children that they believe need some form of hypnotherapy for whatever reason, what's the age that you would recommend getting the hypnotherapy done? Like, how young can they actually get something like that done?
So the little I've worked on like a 3.5-year-old.
Wow.
And I couldn't take her into regression because she was
too young.
Yeah,
she was there.
Yeah, she was too. She was adorable, and I was like trying to hypnotize her with a puppet, like you have them hypnotize the puppet, and the puppet falls asleep, and then you have the puppet do it. It's so cute. But she's 3.5, and she was just like rolling around the couch and looking at her mother, and all I got, again, I get these messages, and I said, I got hypnotize the mother. Hypnotize the mother, hypnotize the mother. And I'm like, I'm getting that. I need to hypnotize you.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. So I took the mother into trance, and I asked the mother, take me back to a scene that has everything to do with her, with the daughter's allergies, because it's for allergies. And she went back to 3 scenes from her own life, the mother's own life, all having to do with fear and betrayal and not feeling safe. So that got transferred to the baby in utero.
Oh.
That's why she was born with allergies. It wasn't, she was an empath. There it is again. She sucked up all her mother's fear from her life. And this was really cool too. This was a family that was a classic, the 4 ways you survive in a tribe. The father was the caretaker. He was off working all the time. The mother was the perfect one, the brilliant one. She's very smart, brilliant. I don't remember her job, but she did something where she was really good at it. The older daughter was the troublemaker, the rebellious one, and this little girl was the sick one.
Oh my God.
And there was a new baby on the way. So the new baby doesn't get a role. Has to double up on the roles.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So the baby absorbed all the mother's fears from her life. So, and I've had people regress to being an egg in their mother's womb when the mother's like 7.
Wow.
And something happens. So
yeah.
I don't know all there is to know, but I've seen some stuff. So so you can so it can be any age. I may have to work on the mother, and that happened with a 5-year-old boy too. I regressed the mother, and she went back to some scenes from his when he was a baby, because he was 5 and he was jumping around and he couldn't sit still.
So how would you treat a child with allergies for that kind of a thing? Because obviously you can go back, through the mother to figure out what the cause was.
Right.
But how would you then treat the child so that the allergies would resolve themselves? You just have to wait till they're older to do it with them, or? Not
necessarily. I'm not sure how that little girl panned out, but I made her a recording that was like, she had like Minnie Mouse was her favorite. Like you figure out their favorite toy or their favorite show, and you get, kind of some of that information, like their favorite superhero or something.
Yeah.
You have them walk down the stairs, like when we take you into an induction, we have you think about going down the stairs. It represents going deeper and deeper into your subconscious mind. And so she's walking down the pink glittery stairs with Minnie Mouse down to her castle, and then she's like, I don't know, I think it was all about how she was so healthy and her immune system was strong and how she could eat anything she wanted. You don't really talk about the allergies or the negative stuff. You talk about them being healthy. Now, in that case, the father does the allergy elimination treatment. So I think he was like 1 foot in the hypnosis and still stuck on the allergy elimination, because he had done hundreds and hundreds of treatments on her and she wasn't any better. So I knew it was probably emotional. So I'm not sure if she got any better, but the mother was like, she loves the recording. She makes me play it twice. And she really liked it, because I have a good voice for the recordings, and they feel really relaxed, and it's just like calming, and it's just like this vision of them being healthy and happy and eating whatever they want. And that's how suggestible they are. They could get over it just from that. But again, I don't know necessarily with that. But other kids, they'll go back to some fear, and then the fear, the belief is the world isn't safe. So if you don't believe the world is safe, it's like food's not safe, people aren't safe, and they'll develop like chemical sensitivities and food sensitivities and sensitivities to electricity, and like some people will claim it's a real thing that's like, oh, but we're all allergic to electricity, and it's like, well, I've been living around electricity my entire life, and like maybe it's affecting me, probably, but electricity, even if we didn't have all this technology, we'd still have electricity like in the air, and we are electrical, like we have electrical signals happening in our bodies. So everything is just a belief. If you can live your life as like, well, everything, that's just a belief, And so if people could just live like that, we would have a totally, because you could question your beliefs. And just be like, well, is that belief serving me to think that the world isn't safe? Like technically it isn't safe. But if you live like that, always looking for the unsafe thing, how's that going to be for a life? It's not going to be a very joyful life. It's going to be like the caveman life, How are you going to live 100 years like constantly watching out for something, you know. And
Yeah.
people do, like people who are born into survival mode,
Mm-hmm.
they don't always get out of it, you know,
Yeah.
but they can. It's
Yeah.
just, you know, it takes a little work.
And it's interesting too. So my grandpa, who's my dad's father, he was a wonderful man, but he, when he was growing up, he had a very tough childhood. So I don't know if he was an only. I believe he was an only child, um, and he had his mom, and his father was abusive and a drunk. And so any money that was made, he basically would spend all the money at the bar and then come home and beat the crap out of his wife and kid. And so as my pop-up got older, he would start defending his mom and basically like stopping the dad and throwing his dad out.
Yeah.
Into the curb basically. And then one day when he was, I think he was in his teens, basically his dad just never came home, and they were like, well, what happened? Turns out he had literally died in the street from alcohol poisoning, and he just died. And he said, you know, he remembered feeling relieved when his father passed away, because it was just like, well, thank gosh, he's not going to come home. He's not going to beat up my mom anymore. He's not going to beat me anymore. Like, we can actually have money and it doesn't go to, you know, to the drains.
Yeah.
Like, that was his feeling towards his father,
Yeah.
which I could never imagine, you know, growing up in that kind of a situation and feeling that way about your parents. But what was interesting, so he ended up going into the Air Force, and he, you know, had a very, very interesting life, I'd say. But he didn't have like a career in the Air Force. He just went to the Air Force, did his, you know, 4 years, and then got out. And he ended up with a fear of leaving his house as he got older. And so even, you know, like my entire time that I ever knew him, he didn't like leave his house. He spent most of his time, you know, him and my grandma lived in Pennsylvania, and they would be in the house, and, you know, he would maybe go like an hour away from the house, but that was it. Like he, you know, and my grandma had told me that, you know, she always felt like almost betrayed. Like, how would you not want to go see your kids, your grandkids? Like, because they all lived in New York, or, you know, we lived in Texas at the time.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, how could you not want to travel and go see them? Like, you know, they're your children. And he just described it. He said, you know, anytime we even talk about leaving the house, he's like, I just get this, like, pit in my stomach. And I just feel like I want to throw up. You know, and I wondered if that kind of went back to that childhood of just not feeling safe, you know, feeling that the world is this big scary place, because as a child it was always this big scary place, you know.
But what's coming to my mind is the way his father died. He left and he never came back.
That's true too.
So I think it's both. Yeah, because despite the fact that he felt relieved when his father died, you still are like, I don't have a father now. And there's still part of you that doesn't feel whole subconsciously, subconscious. So yeah, he defended his mother, you pushed his father out. The father was obviously in a ton of pain and was most definitely beaten himself, because you don't just do that out of nowhere. So he probably had an alcoholic parent or both, and was beaten a lot. So, and he had so much pain, it was just, would get blinding drunk and do that. So, numbing the pain. And so, I think it's both, like not feeling the world. If your own father isn't safe, the world probably isn't safe, but also his father left and died. So the mind's like, if you leave, you could die. And also, and I mean, you could get on a plane to go visit your grandchildren, and the plane could, the plane. So that's another example of the mind being really powerful to keep him safe, not even letting him go more than an hour away from home. Just keeps him safe, right? Not very interesting life, but you sure are safe there. So you have to almost like you have to bargain with the mind, like, but I am safe. Like, the world is a safer place now. Like, every year the world gets safer. I mean, people will argue it's not, but I think, depending
statistically speaking, we know it is.
Right. Yeah. But if you live in a war zone, you know, it's not necessarily safe. But and technically it isn't safe. I mean, people are driving into sinkholes in Florida and stuff. You know, so stuff happens, and I guess you have to make the choice. Do I want to live in my own house in a corner of a room and be totally safe, or do I want to go out and risk it? You know, because there is a risk.
Yeah.
But I mean, you end up home anyway.
Yeah.
You know, you go to the good place after you leave this place. You know, so
yeah.
So yeah, that's why I look at life as like, you know, I mean, you have to have some fun. You know, look at it as having fun and enjoying the time that you're here, because it's a blip. You know, it's like, what do they have the football field of time.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know, the Earth or something. And so if it was a year, so let's say this was like a calendar, the evolution of the human would be like on December 31st.
Yeah.
It's like that. It's like all this, it's and
like
then
a few
that.
seconds
Oh
on the
yeah,
last
it's
day.
not
Yeah.
even, it's like right before midnight on December 31st.
Yeah.
So it's like we haven't been here that long. We come here and to learn things, to do things, experience things. Like, why not make it a good experience?
Yeah.
You know, you have that choice. So, but the subconscious mind, it's very powerful. So for people who say, well, I don't have a choice, that's because their subconscious mind is too powerful for them to even want to do something about it, to try to overcome it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've recently had a little bit of a shift in perception when it comes to parenting, because it's, you know, when you first become a parent, it's like, you know, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm a parent. Like, this is, you like, make it about yourself, which is weird. And then, like, after a while, you're like, this is not about me. Like, this is about my child's experience. Like, this is not, like, this, what's happening right now is not my experience as a mom, even though technically it still is.
Yeah.
It's your child's experience as a child.
Yeah.
You know, and it's to change that perception and just recognize that, you know, maybe I want this house to be a little cleaner, but my child deserves to have the experience of being able to play freely without getting yelled at because the house is a mess.
Right.
You know, and you can still teach them to pick up when they're done, but not to, like, overthink it and think that the clean house is the most important thing, you know?
Yeah. I say that you know, what my father used to say, that you can eat off the floor, but there's nothing to eat.
Right.
The house is so clean, you can eat off the floor, but there's nothing to eat. So it's like, life is not about cleaning. Yeah. Like, and that my mother was. She was crazy about having a clean house. With 6 kids, it's impossible. Yeah. Impossible. Yeah. We're always getting yelled at for it. So it came up in one of my HypnoFit sessions. I was like, it doesn't have to be clean all the time. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, life is messy. Yeah. Like, when you cook, you make a mess. Yeah. My mother was always like that. Whenever you're trying to cook something at her house, so she's trying to clean it up. It's like, no, first you have to cook it. Yeah. You have to use the dishes and the plates and the stuff to eat on. But she'd be trying to clean it up as you were trying to cook it. It's like, no, that's not how it works. Yeah. Because her focus was the cleanliness. Yeah. Whereas at my grandmother's house, she would just make these ginormous meals, and the dishes all got done. They didn't even have a dishwasher. Yeah. We did all the dishes by hand because we would all help each other after she cooked this big meal for us. Yeah. You know, so that's beautiful, because parents do make it about themselves because they're still living through the subconscious. It's like the mother who says, how could you do this to me, when her daughter gets pregnant as a teenager? It's like, she didn't do it to you. Yeah, exactly. You're the one having the baby. Yeah. You know, it's like they're thinking about their friends and their embarrassment. It's none of your, this really has nothing to do with you. Yeah. It's her experience. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So I think that's really great.
I think for me that was a big thing, because we, you know, I'm a huge researcher, so I would always, you know, research, like, the heck out of everything, and it was, you know, what's the best sleeping methods, what's the best, like, you know, all these different things, and then, you know, and I would try to do it, and it's just, I think I was getting so caught up in this idea of how can I be the best mom, that I almost forgot that it's like, this isn't about me being a good mom, this is about her having a good experience. You know, and, you know, so trying to figure out the best, you know, sleeping methods. They're going to sleep eventually on their own. You know what I mean? It's like, So to try to push anything like that, or like potty training, no kid naturally goes, unless they have an issue, no kid naturally goes at 10 years old, you know, in a diaper. Like, you know, like don't push it. They'll get to it when they're ready, you know, and all those different, and just let them experience their life as children, because this is their only experience as children.
Right.
And let them have a good one, because like you said, their childhood affects so much more.
Everything, everything, absolutely. And this whole idea of the best too, like, who said it's the best?
Yeah.
Who did this? This one person who wrote this book says it's the best because they think it's the best.
And there's 1,000 other books that say different things.
Right. It's like what did one of my teachers said? Muhammad Ali was saying he was the best long before he was the best. He's like, I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest. Like, compared to who? Like, who says you're the greatest? He's like, I did, and then he became the greatest.
Yeah.
That's an example of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, he said, I'm the greatest, because he wanted to be the greatest, and he was known as the greatest, and he became one of the greatest boxers, you know, of all time or whatever. So also got his head knocked around so much he ended up with all kinds of problems. But I'm not a fan of boxing, violent sport. But yeah, there's nobody knows what the best of it. What's the best for you? That's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Look at all the things that people say are the best, and then decide what's best for you using your intuition. Yeah. You know, and ask your children. Yeah. You know, what do they want? And they can't always have what they want. They can't have ice cream for breakfast. Not a good idea.
It's like maybe for lunch.
Not good. Not good programming. But you know, just listening to them and being there for them, and letting them have that experience, and experiencing their emotions too. Because so many people were told, you know, not to cry and not to get angry and not to do this, not to that, and they just stuff it. Stuff it and stuff it and stuff it, and then they have to come to somebody like me to get it all worked out. It's like the stuffing of it, because you watch kids, right? They have an emotion. Yeah. You know, tell them, you take their toy, or you tell them to go to bed, or whatever it is, and they get angry, and like 90 seconds later they're just, you know, doing their thing. Yeah. That's the way we're actually supposed to experience our lower vibration emotions. They're not bad, they're not even negative, they're just low vibration. Like, have the anger, and then move through it, change your perspective, and then move on with your life. Don't just keep stuffing it and adding it to the bag you're carrying it. You know? So it's important for children to have all their emotions and feel what they're feeling, and you know, just be comforting. And mostly what they want is attention and time and love, and they don't understand. It's like yelling at the cat when they got on the counter. They don't know. They just think you're being mean. It's like, don't bother yelling at them. They don't understand. Yeah. And they won't understand until they're older. Yeah. And it's you know, I'm sure you'll be an amazing mother, and your children will have great experiences in life, but they will have to go through something at some point. Yeah. 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 And children who are too spoiled, they have problems. Actually, it's really funny. Yeah. They're like, yeah, this amazing childhood, and now I'm a drug addict. And it's because it is because, like, once, if they've had everything handed to them on the platter, they can't do anything for themselves. So I'm glad that we were made to do chores and to do stuff, and you know, learn how to do things, and have rules and everything, because children actually they will push your boundaries until you find it. Yeah. Until they find it, and they actually like having the boundaries. When they have no boundaries, they just are like little wild things. Yeah. You know? And it's funny, my father tells a story about my oldest nephew where he was staying with my parents, and he's 32 now or something, so that was a long time ago. He was just a kid, and he spilled, like, he was, God, such a boundary pusher to this day, and he spilled all his Cheerios on the floor, and my father's like, that's okay, you're going to pick every single one of them up. Yeah. And he made him pick them all up. And he didn't yell at him. Yeah. He just said, that's fine. You get to pick them up now. Yeah. And he made him do it. And he didn't do it again. Yeah. Because it was like, sucked to have to pick up the Cheerios. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, that's a good response. You know what I mean? Because it's like the kids push the boundary. But instead of like getting mad and cleaning it up, make the kid clean it up. Yeah. Like, they did it. You know? Yeah. So, I mean, do that instead of when they throw the knife at you. Like, that's when it's gone too far, you know? Yeah. Because their little subconscious mind, again, they don't know what's good or bad. Yeah. You know, I've had stories, clients tell me about their brother or sister trying to push them off the changing table and kill them because they were taking their place.
Oh my God.
That's subconscious. That's just like, that's them defending their area.
Yeah.
It sounds horrible, but they're not bad. They're just like, oh, you came and took all my attention.
Yeah.
I want you to go away. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I know it sounds crazy, but it is. It's the mind is like, I'm not getting as much attention. There's this beautiful new baby, and my mother only likes them.
Yeah.
And so, it's heartbreaking. I had one girl whose mother was terrible. Used to lock her in her room, basically her whole childhood, just because she didn't want to deal with her. I mean, it's so horrible.
Yeah.
And then when her brother was born, her mother doted on him. And it was heartbreaking for her.
Yeah.
Because she just got locked away, and she had a lot of stuff, a lot of problems because of that. And the same thing happened to her mother. Which, if you talk about a pattern being passed down, you'd think the mother would say, well, I was a girl and I got locked in my room and my mother doted on my brother. I don't want it. But she did the same thing.
Wow.
So she passed that pattern. She just repeated the pattern. So if you're not conscious, you just repeat patterns. They're just on autopilot up there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I know that's a huge thing in a lot of the moms, groups and mom circles is trying to stop yourself from repeating those patterns. That way, whatever traumas you had as a child, you're not passing on to your own.
Yeah.
I
choose, because people do choose that. They choose, they choose a thing. They make a choice. Like, they see that their parents have a terrible relationship, and they're like, I'm going to have a really great relationship. I'm choosing to make it so that I have a great relationship. And they do, but then other stuff comes up. Like, I've had clients do this. They manifest this amazing relationship, but they still have all this fear because of the way life went with their parents in their childhood. So it's like, even though you choose, your subconscious mind is still going to be like, yeah, but what about this? Like, we got to deal with this. And it's some people say it's karma or lessons, or you have to work something out, because nobody gets out without some wounding and some trauma. That's how we grow. It's like, one of my clients is a therapist, and we, in her last session, she's like, yeah, I have this a girl and her father that I see, and I knew it was going to be hard for me because it's like the same relationship she has with her own father. But it's come out really awesome. And she has a great relationship with both the daughter and the father. And she's so glad that, and if she hadn't had that experience with her own father, she might not have been the best therapist. She wouldn't have been as good a therapist for them. So it's like I would say, in our deepest wound is our greatest strength, or is our greatest gift. Yeah. Like, if I hadn't had all that stuff go on in my life, I wouldn't be a hypnotherapist now. I would be doing this amazing work and being so fascinated by the subconscious mind and like the power of it and what we can do with it, like all the good we can do with it,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, I know we're going to have you on the show more.
Yay.
So I think we're going to tie this together now, because we're almost at like 2 hours here.
Oh, God.
So
it's easy to talk about this stuff.
Definitely is, because it's an interesting it's interesting subject matter, and it's something that is so important, and it's something that I think really reaches a lot of moms, because it's so, like you said, everybody's touched by this at some point.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, but we're going to wrap up our show here. So I do want to mention that Mothers Illuminated does have a VIP group on Facebook where you can access extra content, Q&A section, extra, mentorship program through Facebook as well, promo code for free shipping on the merchandise website. All of that is $8 monthly membership with Patreon, so that's patreon.com/mothersilluminated. I also have the merchandise website as well, but everything can be found at podcast.mothersilluminated.com, and they have all the links in there as well. If you want to be on the show, that would be great. Reach out to us at mothersilluminated@gmail.com, and thank you for being here on the show.
It was my pleasure again. I love talking about this stuff, and you're so fun. You're such a lovely and gracious hostess. So
well, thank you.
Wonderful. It's great stuff. So thank you for having me.
And then real quick before we do sign off, Do you want to kind of tell people how to find you?
Absolutely. So I'm in the process of working on my website. I'm working on somebody is working on a logo for me as we speak. I should have it on Monday, which is my birthday. Woo!
Oh, happy
And
birthday.
yeah, thank you. And so it's actually KasiaWeglarz.com. There isn't a www because that was already taken. Somebody in the world with my name.
Yeah.
Go figure, but it's Kasia, Kasia, Weglarz, WEGLARZ.com. And you can, my email is kasia@kasiaweglarz.com. My phone number is 603-254-6716. And if you look for me on Facebook, Kasia Weglarz Transformational Hypnotherapy, I'm on there. I have a personal page, and I mostly do business stuff on there too. So you can look for my business page and my personal page, and all that information is there as well. So thanks.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.